We begin with
Heart, heart, heart. Just one more heart.
Neelix playing poker. Some people might say that spending 3 times the length of time Voyager was actually on the air, actually talking about it as being obsessive, to which I can only say, shut up, Mom. But it seemed by now that with Neelix, we have a very strained relationship. He's very much like an annoying roommate that just when you think you've compartmentalized all the infuriating little things they do, every once in a while they come up with an entirely new way to fuck with you. At this point, I very likely would have murdered him. In that spur of the moment, there'd be a plan with like alibis and diagrams. It would make the cask of Amontillado look spontaneous. The only solace I can take in this scene is that, thank the Almighty, Neelix does not win the hand. He is actually doing a horrendously bad job of bluffing, which is shocking because lying is the only thing that Neelix was ever good at. Tom would have won the hand because he's Tom Paris, but it's interrupted by the arrival of a Borg cube. After the titles, the attempted escape continues. Chakotay in command, Tom piloting, Harry trying to keep the engines going, and Neelix making us wonder what the hell he's even doing here. Eventually, it's too much, and the Delta Flyer is caught and dragged inside, and soon the trio from the cockpit area are seen in an assimilation chamber, although thankfully there must be an out-of-order sign on it. There's a botched assimilation on the table. Yeah, this looks like a job for IT. Better leave it for them to sort out. Voyager's on the way, but the news that there's a cube is going to make this rescue kind of hard. Luckily for them, it seems the problem isn't just the assimilation chamber. It's the whole damn ship that's on the fritz. Must have downloaded some malware or something. The ship is in such bad shape, the 28 cubic kilometer harbinger of the apocalypse loses the fight within 30 seconds. But they can't get the 4 of them back, so this quickly becomes a conversation. And why not? The last time they made a deal with the Borg, it went swimmingly. Though I guess you could say they came out ahead in that there were several new options for erotic fan fiction to be developed. The Borg want the navigational deflector off of Voyager, which is a double whammy. It'll let them contact the rest of the collective while leaving Voyager unable to go to warp. There's no way this deal will end well for them. So Janeway chooses the tried and true method, lie your ass off. Oh yeah, we'll do it, but blah blah blah, so it's going to be a little while. Oh, and we're going to need to make sure the hostages are okay. Seven is allowed to go over, alone, and finds a lot of dead drones, but eventually finds a baby in a maturation chamber. I like that. I mean, obviously I don't like the literal situation we're witnessing, but tying back to Q-Who, with the idea that Borg are not all assimilated, that some are created and immediately cybernetically enhanced, well, yeah. Theoretically, it could have been a freshly assimilated baby, I know, but the odds of hitting the timing just right. The only other time that we're ever in a maturation chamber, that's stretching the odds, don't you think? Especially when you consider the number of actual children we have on board here. Yeah, it's not like they just hit a planet or something. It just happened to scoop up a kid. Oh, plus there's that whole thing in drone, too. I think it's just a common thing that they do. Every once in a while, they just generate a couple of more as needed. After all, assimilation is there to bring in new information and ideas, but sometimes you just flat out need more bodies. I mean, keep in mind how small the complement on a cube is. It's ridiculous. Seven gives the figure of 5,000 as being what would normally be required for a cube of this size. 28 cubic kilometers, 5,000 drones. That means that if you use the population density of Manila, you could fit the crews of 75 Borg cubes on one deck. Think of how many decks it actually has. Even subtracting room for the stuff that makes it all work and room to take apart any interesting ships. No wonder they sent only one cube to Earth. That's the equivalent of your Uber driver picking you up in a frickin' school bus. Speaking of which, by now you've noticed that the drones here are all kids, and despite their insistence, Seven knows that drones that are not mature are going to malfunction because they're not done cooking yet. She intends to modify the deal since she didn't know she was dealing with children, and thus they can be erratic. So to prove how not erratic he is, the one in charge says, "Give us what we want or we'll murder the hostages." Seven gradually finds out that the one calling the shots seized command when, let's not kid ourselves, it's Icheb. Icheb was unable to create order among the 5 of them. She's taken a seat in the trio of hostages, and after a little unpleasantness, Seven is allowed to bring a dead drone and a data node back to figure out what happened, in order to make sure it doesn't take out the rest of them. Turns out they were taken down not by some serious plot to finally spare the locals from the threat of the Borg. Oh no, they just stumbled across a space virus that happened to be too much for them. That's a rather lame explanation. Yeah, it worked in War of the Worlds, but there's a reason that happened 100 years before this. Tuvok figures they could salvage this situation by using the virus against the remaining Borg, but the Doctor's aghast at the thought, obviously forgetting who he's working for. Janeway could order bioweapons against children while holding a baby. Luckily for Harry, he comes to while still on the Delta Flyer, and while Voyager is trying to hail him without the Borg kids noticing. Elsewhere, Janeway tries to convince the Borg to give up all of this and come on Voyager, possibly getting back to their own people. But the one in charge is adamant on rejoining the collective and physically assaults her. So she suggests a couple of alternatives. 1, no longer choking her, and 2, let Seven fix the ship so they won't need the deflector. So while she jumps to that, they get a 2-hour time limit or the hostages die, Harry finally manages to get through, so now he's part of the plan. Seven will work on putting the ship together, and Harry will work on tearing it apart. It's a little game Janeway likes to play.
Tuvok will guide you to the shield generator. If you destroy it, you won't have to make the trip back.
If you don't, you won't need to bother coming back. Icheb talks to Seven a little while she works, clearly intrigued by what she and Janeway have been talking about. And in a touching moment, he notes that Seven has hair that reminds him of his mother. But that's when little Hitler shows up, threatening him with deactivation. He's not going to tolerate anyone not fully on board the assimilation train. Problem is, that train is never leaving the station. Seven says they can't fix communications because there's nothing wrong. The Borg just don't want anything to do with this ship and those 5 drones. After all, something bad happened. The last thing they want to do is waste another ship on it. Under normal circumstances, the drones would have been able to decrypt the message, get the point, and then deactivate. But this is obviously different. They can do anything. They're teens. They can start that Tide Pod trick or something. After discussing bringing the drones to Voyager, we get to watch Harry embarrass himself, although there's no need for me to state the obvious, so let's move on. Little Hitler is quite upset, as usual. No need for me to get specific on that either. But his tirade is interrupted when the maturation chamber for the baby shuts down, and that's bad news. The only way to save it is to send it to Voyager, and while little Hitler objects, it's clear that the others won't wear it if he tries to stop Seven and it dies. The Doctor is able to save the infant and shows her, but it turns out it's a girl, to Janeway.
The pathogen. I finished synthesizing it.
Start working with Tuvok on a way to deploy the virus.
Yeah, I told you. Did you think I was joking? I've stopped telling jokes about Janeway and just started telling you what she does. It's eviler and funnier that way. Admittedly, it's not a bad idea. The Borg kids are unpredictable. They have killed, are threatening to kill again, and also we soon find out have attempted to assimilate Harry. He's going to die without treatment, since, of course, they have no idea what they're doing after all. Soon, they're just trying to flat out yank the deflector off of Voyager with their tractor beam, so Seven shares the truth with them about their rejection. Naturally, little Hitler refuses to accept this, and even when it's proven, he just intends to prove their worth to the Borg by assimilating other species. Yeah, I'm sure that'll work out. Right now, you can't even beat Voyager in a fight, and that's without the first officer, without Harry, with Torres up on the bridge instead of in engineering, and a pilot we don't even know the name of. So, yeah, good luck with your plan. Just to further prove my point, Janeway technobabbles the Borg's tractor beam to not only disrupt their ship, but to allow them to beam away the hostages. In a fit of pique, little Hitler refuses to let the rest of them beam away, and instead tries to physically bash Seven, forcing Icheb to intervene. Things get so out of hand that the punk finally gets fatally zapped and soon shuts down. The rest of them manage to retreat to Voyager before the ship blows up. We don't actually see it blow up because we still have to save the Delta Flyer, remember. Can't blow it up for at least another half season. In the coda,
I have a great deal to learn.
It might help if they had someone around who knew what they're up against.
I've never been responsible for children.
wrong ship, Seven. You should know by now on Voyager the quickest way to get a job is to protest how much you'd suck at it. Besides, we all know that you'll be in charge of all the science stuff that Torres used to do by default, so she's going to be the one that winds up doing all the annoying stuff with the kids. Although I'm sure she'll occasionally be interrupted by Neelix's well-intentioned efforts. I'm sure that she'll be happy to contribute to my plan. Post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix moment is the poker game. Nothing more need to be said on that. Final score for Collective is 5 out of 10. It's just fairly by the numbers for Voyager. Though it is slightly enhanced by two things. One is finally showing us the part of the Borg cube that houses the captured ships, and also for the touching moment between Icheb and Seven. Introducing more Borg like this, well, I give them this. They're disrupting the status quo, at least a little bit, so I'll give them props for that. And while removing the uniqueness of Seven by introducing other Borg does rub me the wrong way a little bit, knowing how well Icheb works out in providing a new area for her to explore, being a mentor, is a good thing for the show. And at least we all know things are going to work out very well for Icheb in the end.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Alright, I'm supposed to teach you your first engineering lesson. Voyager uses a fairly standard warp core and a very impressive piece of equipment. Neelix, what do you want? Well, I've come to help. I always educate the little tykes. Did you know that on Earth the warp drive was invented by a man named Zephram Cockring? Neelix, I'm just here to help them understand all these things. It's so complicated. We know how to build a quantum slipstream device to harness the force of subspatial currents. Oh, that sounds very impressive, but today we're here to understand Zephram Cockring's warp drive. Shut up. I'm the chief engineer. You're the garbage man who managed to fail his way up to Frycook. All right, kids. The warp core is powered by a mixture of matter and antimatter. That's pretty amazing stuff. Matter and antimatter, now, they make energy because they're opposites. They're like that, what are those singers that Tom likes, B'Elanna? Rolling Stones? No. AC/DC? No. Listen, Neelix, I remember. Penn and Teller. Those are magicians. Oh, I see. But yeah, matter and antimatter are like them. One is tall and talks all the time, and one is short and never says anything. Neelix, that's the worst explanation for anything that I have ever heard. Well, I'm just trying to get the kids. Antimatter is all about equal and opposite, not just two things that are different. You and I are different, Neelix, a fact that I have thanked Kalis for many, many times. Well, there's no need to get upset, B'Elanna. So if Teller is matter, he's a silent performer who can escape from anything he's put in. What would antimatter be then? If I was to use your example, then antimatter would be the same but opposite. So a silent performer who is so bad at escaping he can be trapped by things that aren't even there. Oh, you mean like a mime? What? Gets trapped in boxes that aren't really there. Yes, fine. So Teller is matter and a mime is antimatter, equal and opposite. So they should never shake hands or they'll explode. Neelix, with enough power to destroy an entire city, at least. Neelix! Clown white and playing cards everywhere. Neelix, would you shut up? It's just an analogy. Oh, B'Elanna, I can see you're upset, but there's no need to use that word in front of the kids. What are you blithering about now? You know, the buttocks area? Center of the rear, pardon my use of pig Latin, but, the ectum ray? Are you talking about analogy? I think you'll find the Italians actually pronounce it analogy. It has nothing to do with the anus, you toilet brush. I heard someone was talking about destroying an entire city. What's up? Weren't you on the planet on an away mission? Your face is an away mission. What? No, you're the idiot. What was that about destroying a city? You mentioned you had some kind of new weapon, an ectum ray, was it? How do you fire those? We were discussing antimatter annihilation, Captain. Yes, you see, mimes are antimatter. Are they really? Yes. You see, Teller? You mean Edward Teller? You know, I never caught his name on the show, but it could be. Well, Edward Teller was the father of the hydrogen bomb. If he says he can blow up a city with a mime, I believe him. It's actually if they were to shake hands, Captain. Ah, that explains why mimes always have to wear gloves. I've always wondered that. Captain, I'm just trying to teach the kids what makes the ship go. Heh, what makes the ship go is the captain on the bridge saying, do it, and then every peon on board jumps to get it done. Or else I come down and stick my boot you know where. I don't know where she means. It's the analogy. Ah, you've been teaching them Italian. Although knock off that sailor talk. You get back to it, Torres, and Neelix, I'm impressed. I'm promoting you to chief engineer. Get to work on designing me that ectum ray immediately. Can do, Captain. Class dismissed.
I'm afraid.